So, what's going on appears to be that I have lost my place in the book. Damn it. Okay, let me just find. I'm starting at chapter 2 here because for the simple reason that I've already recorded chapter 1. This book is of books and magic, and it is part of the Spoken Mage universe, is what it is. It's an upcoming novella by Melanie Cellier, who did the stupendously good Spoken Mage series. And also, what is the name of the other series? Because The Hidden Mage, that's it. I completely blanked on it. She did the Spoken Mage series and then brought me back for the Hidden Mage series. And now 5 years later, something like that, I am back again in this universe of Books and Mages, which is a really fun little novella set in the same universe and set about 5 years from when the events of the Spoken Mage took place. 5 years onward. So bear with me here. I just need to get my files all set up, and then I'll be ready to go. And I might just take a quick listen to chapter 1. I take my tea. It's already warm in here. Okay, okay. So let's see. Let's do this. Chapter 2. No wonder he had so many internal pockets. It made sense that mages would want to keep their compositions on their person, and they would need some way to organize them and quickly access the right ones. Zachary sucked in a pained breath as he retrieved one of the compositions in his two least injured fingers. He shook it out enough to get a glimpse of the words written on the parchment. I quickly averted my face, making it obvious I wasn't trying to spy on the writing. He didn't seem to notice either way, though. Yes, this one to start with, he muttered, only to pause and look at me. Which one of us is worse off? I opened my mouth to say it was definitely him, but he had already continued speaking. Never mind that. You saved me. Lifting the coiled rectangle of parchment to his mouth, he gripped it between his teeth and pulled, ripping it in half. He let the halves drift to the ground, flicking his few working fingers in my direction. The pain lifted instantly, shock waves of relief rolling through me. The dizziness ebbed along with it, so I peered at my arm. Surely he hadn't healed me. The jagged wood still remained in place, untouched. But now that the pain was gone, I could absorb that it was bleeding only sluggishly, the wood plugging the hole it had created. It was the pain, not blood loss, that had pushed me near collapse. I looked up in time to see Zachary tear a second roll of parchment, this time flicking his fingers at himself. The lines on his face instantly eased and his shoulders relaxed. That is a great deal better. He grinned at me, and despite everything, I grinned back. Sudden relief from intense pain was a heady feeling. You're a mage. You're a mage, I said, somewhat foolishly, and he nodded. I am. He crouched back down to scoop up the remaining scrolls of parchment, his movements still clumsy and awkward. So there's no need to report me to the Greys for illicit reading. He shot me a smile, but I didn't smile back. As a mageborn, he had been born with the bloodline to control power, so he had never been at risk from the grey-robed mages of the Seekers. The discipline that hunted down anyone learning to read illegally was only a threat to Blah. So, in case it's not clear, I adore this series. I love the uniqueness of the world, of the fact that generally speaking, spells aren't spoken. They're written. And that means that words literally have power, and you can't not just anybody can read. It can be dangerous. Okay, let's see. Okay. The discipline that hunted down anyone learning to read illegally was only a threat to unsealed commonborn, the ones who might accidentally blow ourselves up if we ever tried to write, taking a whole chunk of the city with us. Zachary had never been forbidden access to the written word as I had always been. My eyes lingered hungrily on the parchment in his hands. I had worked hard for 5 years to win the right to access words, and yet that dream was still as far away as ever. He looked painstakingly through the parchments that remained whole, finally choosing one and lifting it to his teeth to tear it. As I watched, fascinated, his limp arm straightened, and he flexed the fingers of the opposite hand, his grip on the remaining parchments shifting and strengthening. "You healed yourself," I gasped at him as he swung both arms, testing them. He nodded, but his expression was apologetic. "I'm sorry I can't do the same for you. My injuries were more immediately debilitating, but they were just clean breaks, whereas your situation is more complicated." He grimaced. "I'd have to start by pulling that wood out for one, and that might cause a lot of bleeding. If I messed up the healing..." He sighed. "I should have taken more healing classes." I shook my head. I had no doubt the compositions he'd already used were incredibly valuable. He must have written them himself, perhaps in his... He must have written them himself, perhaps in his days at the Royal Academy. I eyed him again. He wasn't wearing a white trainee's robe, which meant he had to be older than I'd first imagined. Now that my mind wasn't clouded by pain, I had so many questions. What was he doing in this part of the city? The answer to that question was obvious, though. He had to be a weak mage from one of the minor families, the type who was just strong enough to pass the academy and avoid having his powers sealed, but who wasn't strong enough to be accepted to a mage discipline. Mages like that sometimes chose to make a living by either tutoring commonborn, reading aloud the words we couldn't read ourselves, or selling compositions to those commonborn rich enough to buy them. The compositions I'd retrieved for him hadn't been secured, shut, and color-coded, though, so presumably he sold to sealed commonborn only. The loss of 3 healing compositions represented a significant loss of income. How difficult had they been for him to make? He'd probably prostrated himself for a day or more to compose the one for breaks. And he'd used the first of his compositions on me. I smiled at him, softened. But a fresh thought jolted through me, making me stiffen. It's weird. Oh. I just lost one of my tabs, but it's back. I open something really quickly just so I have it for reference. Okay. Making me stiffen. I'd nearly forgotten it was my birthday. You've taken the pain away, which is the main thing, I said hurriedly. Now I have the strength to get home. Home? He stepped toward me, looking alarmed. You have a piece of wood sticking out of your arm. You can't just go home. I laughed. If I don't go home, my mother will kill me, and then any healing compositions used on me will have been wasted. Your own mother isn't going to kill you for getting a necessary healing. He regarded me suspiciously, as if he suspected some ulterior motive. You haven't met my mother. I grinned and shook my head. She's probably already furious that I'm late, and she'd be even more furious if I went to a She's probably already furious that I'm late, and she'd be even more furious if I went to a healing clinic. Clinic? Oof. She's probably already furious that I'm late, and she'd be even more furious if I went to a healing clinic without consulting her first. She used to be a healing assistant before she joined my father's business, and she's always taken care of our illnesses and injuries. Plus, it's my birthday today. A small swell of the earlier missing pride hit me unexpectedly. I'm 18 today, and she's planned a special meal. It's your birthday? Zachary sounded more shocked than the occasion warranted. And you were on your way to your own party? He shook his head. But you stopped to help me anyway. My gratitude has doubled. Thank you. And happy birthday. Maybe I was still a little out of my mind. Maybe I was still a little out of my mind from the pain relief because I leaned forward and said conversationally, I thought you might be the shrouded mage. The shrouded Zachary blinked. Oh, you mean the shrouded killer? I refrained from rolling my eyes, but only barely. So the mages had a different name for him. The Reds had used their law enforcement compositions to prove the killer was a mage, but of course the Mageborn wouldn't want to acknowledge that fact every time they referred to the criminal. Zachary blinked at me several more times as he absorbed my meaning. You thought I was an infamous killer who stalks the lower city for his victims, and you therefore ran toward me. I was going to run away, I said, but then I heard the sounds of a struggle. I was running toward the victim, not the killer. A meaningless distinction if they were locked in a struggle at the time, he said dryly, but he looked impressed. My insides warmed, my chest tightening in response to the warmth of admiration in his eyes. Thankfully for both of us, they were just ordinary thieves, I said, aware that the shrouded mage wouldn't have been run off so easily. Zachary grimaced. I might have had a better chance against one mage than 3 commonborn, actually. I didn't think I would be so easily overcome, but I'm not so... Oh, come on. Okay. I didn't think I would be so easily overcome, but I'm not used to fighting so. But I'm not used to fighting so many at once. They kept me too busy to retrieve a composition in the first few seconds, and then he gestured toward the arm that had been broken. I shook my head, unconvinced. If the shrouded mage was an easy target, law enforcement wouldn't still be hunting him after all this time. I sighed, hating the thought of the menace who was casting a shadow over the lower city. If you ask me, you were extremely fortunate. I cast an eye over him, trying to picture him without the dirt and blood. You're a good fit for the victim. You're a good fit for the kind of victims he targets. Zachary's eyes lit up. You think so? I stared at him. Did he have a death wish? He'd been too quick to heal himself for that to make any sense. I wanted to linger and question him further. I'd never had a conversation this long with a mage before, but I could feel a clock ticking in my head. My guests would have already arrived. I took a step backward toward the mouth of the alley. Those three definitely weren't the shrouded killer, Zachary continued. The law enforcement mages have already established that he works alone. These ones were just copycats. Once again, his speech patterns marked him as a mage. Among the common-born, we just called law enforcement the Reds, not bothering with their official title. His words kept broadcasting that he was out of his element, so it was no wonder he'd gotten into trouble, wandering the streets of the lower city without a single clue. But his conclusion interested me. What do you mean by copycats? I could afford to linger for another minute or two. Zachary's mouth twisted. They wouldn't be the first, unfortunately. Once the actions of a repeat criminal become known, some people see a terrible sort of opportunity. They think that if they make their crime match the shrouded killings closely enough, then law enforcement will assume it was the shrouded killer and not come after them. My mouth fell open, anger filling me. But that's awful. He gave a wry smile. Yes, but I'm guessing people who are willing to kill don't have a lot of scruples. I screwed up my nose, but I couldn't deny his logic. It's a good thing I came along when I did. I edged another step backward. You'll at least let me walk you to your house. Not house, home. Hello, by the way. Thank you for joining me. I am reading from Of Books and Mages, which is an upcoming novella by Melanie Cellier, who wrote the Spoken Mage. It's not, what is it? 5-book series, quintology? Is that a thing? Yeah, and this takes place about 5 years after the Spoken Mage series. You'll at least let me walk you to your home. He looked perturbed. What if my pain composition doesn't last long enough and you end up collapsing partway there? You were injured saving me, and I can't just walk away without being sure you're going to be all right. I couldn't help another flood of warmth at his genuine concern. But I couldn't arrive home not only injured, but with a mage in tow. My family were going to be shocked enough, but they would be furious if they grasped the full extent of my reckless actions. That's all right, I said hurriedly. It isn't far. I took yet another step toward the freedom of the street. Wait! Zachary leaped forward and grasped at my sleeve. I can't just let you walk off with a piece of wood sticking out of your arm. I pulled away instinctively, and my already damaged shirt tore further, sending a small item tumbling to the ground. I gasped and lunged for it, but my injured arm hampered my movements, and Zachary got there first. The apologies on his lips died as he took in what he held in his hands. He looked up at me slowly, and I took another step back. But I couldn't actually flee, not while he was still holding the folded and sealed parchment. Leaping forward, Zachary clamped an iron hand around my good forearm, pulling it forward so he could examine my wrist. It was conspicuously clear of the intricate pattern of dark skin pigmentation. So, quick primer, in this world, Commonborn don't have access to spells, and spells are written, not spoken. So the fact that she has anything in writing is already a huge no-no. It was conspicuously clear of the intricate pattern of dark pigmentation that would have marked me as sealed. I wasn't sealed, and we both knew it, and that made the letter in his hand a serious crime. The sides of the alley caved in on me, extinguishing the last ember of hope. Extinguishing the last ember of hope I had been clinging to so desperately. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 2. So really quickly, I'm just gonna get set up for chapter 3. Cool, so chapter 2 was 13 minutes. Yeah, so in the original series, there's only one mage who can actually speak spells. And it's a big deal that it's called the Spoken Mage. And therefore, because words have power, writing is strictly forbidden, and reading is strictly forbidden for the Commonborn. Okay. So that's good. All right. Chapter 3. You aren't sealed. Zachary's voice held as... You aren't sealed. Zachary's voice held as much steel as the hand that still gripped my arm. What are you doing with writing? It isn't mine, I gasped out, my whole body frozen. You know that doesn't matter, he growled. You know that doesn't matter, he growled. Unsealed Commonborn are not permitted words. Terror filled me, more potent than what I had felt during the attack. It strengthened my spine and lent fire to my voice. I would have to be more brazen than I had ever been before if I had any hope of salvaging my future. I just saved your life. Are you telling me you're going to hand me over to the Greys for a single sealed letter? His grip on my arm didn't loosen, but his posture softened, his face twisting. Gratitude and personal obligation warred with his ingrained duty. Who taught you to read? He asked. And who has been foolhardy enough to write you a letter? He glanced down at the sealed missive, anger in his eyes, although I wasn't sure if it was directed at me or the letter's unknown author. He must have wanted to break it open and look for a signature, but he couldn't easily do so without relinquishing his hold on me. At least he wasn't making any attempt to drag me away. I had an opening and I needed to push until it turned into a path forward. You don't have to quote lectures at me about reading leading to writing, I said with blah, blah, blah. I just... Okay. Do-do-do-do. Okay. Let's try that again. Try that whole section again. You don't have to quote lectures at me about reading leading to writing, I said with as much indignation as I could muster. In my 10 years of study, I've never attempted to read, not even once. I wouldn't put my dreams and future at risk so foolishly. Both his eyebrows shot up. Ugh. Well, that sounded fine right up until my app decided it was going to go scooch forward. Excuse me if I find that a little hard to believe, given this. He shook the letter slightly. My heart beat fast, but I forced myself to meet his eyes. You can see it has a seal. It isn't for me, and I have no intention of reading it. Just carrying it with you is a very serious crime. If you're still studying, you must be hoping to win a place in a sealing ceremony. Having this in your possession alone means you would never be chosen, and worse consequences besides. Only if someone catches me with it, I said. Only if someone catches me with it, I said, but the words fell dully onto the cobblestones between us, my summoned fire sputtering and dying. Someone had caught me with it. But as my hope died away, some of Zachary's ire seemed to die with it. He looked between the folded letter and me, curiosity in his eyes. If the letter isn't for you, if it's true you can't even read, why would you risk carrying it with you? I bit my lip. I have to stay on my teacher's good side, I blurted out. There's another robot 2 years below me. He leaned back a little, his grip slackening and his brow creased. What? I sighed. I know you're a mage, but even you must have heard of the robots. They may be common-born, but they're a powerful merchant family. Of course I've heard of them. But what do they have to do? But what do they have to do with this? I groaned. Most of them live in this section of the city. Is your teacher a robot, then? Zachary frowned. And he gave you this? I still don't understand. No, he isn't a robot. My voice dropped to a mutter. He just wishes he was. I took one look at Zachary's confused expression and sighed again. If it was going to make sense to him, I needed to tell him the whole story. It wasn't something I liked to talk about, but I would tell Zachary my deepest childhood secrets if there was any chance they would extricate me from the situation. They wouldn't, of course. But blah. Okay. But if I could make him understand my position, maybe this tale could. Hang on a sec. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. I would tell him my deepest childhood secrets if there was any chance they would extricate me. If I could make him understand my position, maybe this tale would extricate me from it. Okay, that tripped me up. But if I could make him understand my position, maybe this tale could. I've been top of the class for the last 4 years, I told him flatly, unable to muster any pride since the vast effort had so far gained me nothing. The other students didn't even resent me for it, much, since they knew I worked twice as hard as anyone else. And yet, Zachary's eyes dropped to my unmarked wrist. Okay, I'm going to look something up really quickly because I'm not sure how to say it. Okay. I don't. So, as I said, it's been 5 years since I've done this series, so part of it is like, is this a made-up word? It does not appear to be. Now I have to see if maybe the script. I'm using a teleprompt app, and sometimes the teleprompt app can just. Sometimes, mostly it's accurate, but yeah, it's. Most times it's accurate, but sometimes it's just doesn't know what. It just mangles it. So let's see what word I'm trying to say. No, that's not it. Okay, this is strange. It's done a weird thing. There haven't been any. Okay, yeah, it did a really weird thing. Sorry. My nose is itchy. Okay, so the text in the script says, "You must know there haven't been many sealing ceremonies in the last few years. I tried to quash the defensive note in my voice, and it just took out." In the text, there's a little dash because the word's broken up, but it just took out the whole line. That's what's going on. That's weird. I've not seen that before with this app. Okay, let's try. You must know there haven't been many sealing ceremonies in the last few years. I tried to squash the defensive note in my voice. There were several in my first year at the school when I was still young, but in the last 4, there has been only one. There has only been one. Zachary swallowed and nodded, unease in his face. Zachary swallowed and nodded, unease in his face. 2 years ago, when a trainee failed the academy. For a moment I was distracted by the incongruity of his emotion, until it hit me once again how differently he saw the world. In the lower city, among the common-born, an academy failure was a matter of excitement, even rejoicing. Among the mages, it must be something both feared and dreaded. It must be something both feared and dreaded. Okay, just want to make some corrections here. Okay. Yes, that's the one, I said, my voice softer. The Office for the Management of Sealed Affairs requested a name from every school in the kingdom. Just one name. Each school was supposed to nominate their top student among those 16 and older. And that was you. He watched my face intently, caught in my story as I had hoped. It was. My voice held a fierce note despite myself. It should have been me. My teacher knew it. Everyone knew it. So what happened? Zachary's grip had slackened, although he didn't entirely let go, the warm circle of his fingers now soft against my skin. We had a second Robart among us back then. My closest friend at the school, Gina. We were the same age and she was great fun, but she didn't have the same dedication to her studies as I did. She didn't want it as badly. A lump formed in the back of my throat and I pushed it away. She was the one to join me whenever I emerged from my studying to have a moment of fun. Fun. Zachary's voice held the ghost of a... Fun. Fun. Zachary's voice held the ghost of a chuckle, giving me a surge of hope. Things like catapulting yourself into piles of crates and leaping on armed attackers. That sort of fun. I managed a grin. You should chat with my... Yeah. You should chat with my mother sometime. She's always bemoaning that such a diligent student can also be so wild and reckless. But she doesn't understand how wearing it gets. Acting with control and discipline all the time. Sometimes I have to rebel and do something wild, or I might explode. Zachary's eyes dropped to the letter in his hand, and his amusement dimmed. So you did something reckless and got yourself overlooked 2 years ago? No! I almost wished I had. If it had been my fault I wasn't chosen, maybe it would have been easier to bear. I wasn't reckless. I just got sick. Not even badly sick. I just got a poorly timed summer cold. Zachary frowned. What difference did that make? All the difference in the kingdom. I drew a deep breath as I reached the painful part of the story. My head was so heavy and foggy for the last test of the year that I didn't perform to my usual standard. Gina, on the other hand, did unusually well. She usually placed in the middle of the class, but she came first that time. I thought she must have studied extra hard and even congratulated her on her success. I dwelt darkly on that thought for a moment before forcing my mind onward. Then the news came about the failure of the mage trainee. I was so elated that I sprinted all the way to school, needing official confirmation that our teacher had been asked to nominate someone for the ceiling. My voice faltered at the memory of the devastation that had so taken me by surprise. You said Gina is a robot. Zachary said the words with grim understanding, proving the quickness of his mind. I nodded miserably. The teachers are supposed to nominate their top student, and everyone knew that was me. But that last test gave him the excuse he needed to choose Gina instead. And you said she studied extra hard for that one test. Zachary spoke the words levelly, but I caught a spark in his eyes. I nodded again. It's obvious in retrospect. The robots are influential enough to know what's happening among the mages. They must have known a failure was likely. I honestly thought Gina was my friend, but she seized her chance when it came. His voice turned gentle. She never even returned to the school. I haven't seen her since. Zachary winced, and I pushed away the old pain. I had to focus on what was happening now if I wanted to avoid an even more devastating blow to my future than Gina's betrayal. From that experience, I learned that it's not enough to be top of the class. I need to be in the teacher's goodwill as well. He received many marks of favor from the robots after Gina was sealed, and I know he has expectations of transferring to a position in their company in the next couple of years. But that's given me an opening. Okay. Hang on a sec. My teleprompt app has jumped again. He's grown increasingly resentful of the demands of his teaching role, and he's always complaining about not having enough time. So I do him small favors when I can, like delivering a letter for him. This isn't a small favor. Zachary let go. Zachary let me go at last, and the sudden lack of contact left me feeling unmoored. I rubbed my palm against the filthy material of my clothes. He must know he could get in as much trouble as you. Zachary strode a few paces away and then wheeled to come back. What's his name? I shook my head. Oh, shit. Okay, for some reason it was not recording. It wasn't recording. Right after Zachary let go. Zachary let me go at last, and the sudden lack of contact left me feeling unmoored. I rubbed my palm against the filthy material of my clothes. He must know he could get in as much trouble as you. Zachary strode a few paces away, and then wheeled to come back. What's his name? I shook my head rapidly. I'm not saying. He looked down at the letter in his hands, and I lunged forward, managing to take him by surprise and seize it back. No, please, don't. We stood, eyes locked, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Please, I whispered softly. Zachary's shoulders slumped as he rubbed a hand over his face and groaned. You did save my life. He looked at the letter in my hand with uncertainty before his eyes rose to my face. You really can't read. You weren't going to open it. I nodded fervently, trying to look earnest and trustworthy. I do not want to turn into a giant fireball. He blew out a long breath. My friends would say I'm a fool for letting myself get dragged into this. I could end up in trouble with the Seekers myself. He sighed. But what I'm... Hey, Gina. But what am I going to do? Drag you down to their headquarters and hand you in while you still have a spear of wood sticking out of your arm from saving my life? I rose onto the balls of my feet, the kernel of hope unfurling inside me. I'd gotten myself into a dangerous mess, but apparently I was going to slip out of it again by the thinnest of margins. Thank you. And you really don't need to worry about me reading. I'm not doing any harm. I'm truly not. Zachary stepped close to me again, and for one unthinking moment I was conscious only of the warmth he sparked inside me. Then he stretched out his hand and snatched back the letter. I gaped at him. "But you just said—" "I said I wouldn't turn you in, but I also said we could all land in trouble for this. I'm not going to send you off to parade around the city with written words tucked in your shirt." My face flushed, this time with fear and anger. The school year wasn't quite over, so there was still the slim possibility that a sealing ceremony would be announced before I was forced to graduate. But if I lost Teacher Wendell's letter, he would never choose me. My last chance would be truly gone. Zachary sighed, his eyes on my face. "Don't worry. I'll make sure it gets to its intended recipient. You wouldn't be able to read it, but her name is on the outside." I stiffened. If I was going down, I would willingly take Teacher Wendell with me. He had wronged me terribly 2 years ago, and I was well aware he had continued to do so with every request. He had wronged me terribly 2 years ago, and I was well aware he had continued to do so with every request for me to deliver a letter since. He had grown overconfident since coming into the Robart sphere, convinced there was no chance anyone would discover his little shortcut. But Faylie was another matter. She might be a Robart, but she wasn't anything like Gina or my teacher. In fact, I already suspected Teacher Wendell had misjudged when he used me to deliver a letter to her. He had done so because he heard she was going to be at my birthday meal that night, but I didn't think she was going to be happy about discovering he'd been using me as a messenger. Faylie was known for being blunt, and while she wouldn't turn us in, neither would she spare either of our feelings when she upbraided us both for fools. "Don't worry," Zachary said, apparently reading my reaction with ease. "It wasn't Faylie who gave you the letter. As far as I'm aware, she's done no wrong here. Yet. I would like a Okay, I'm just gonna fix these really quickly. And Nicholas, hello. Okay. Oops. Okay. I would like a word with her, though. Despite the apparent reassurance of the start of his speech, his final line filled me with foreboding. But I also noted the way he said her name. "You know Faylie." I looked hopefully at him. Surely he wouldn't want to bring any harm down on her if he knew her. "In person, no. But everyone has heard of Faylie." I grinned. Faylie had been sealed in the first wave of ceremonies and had to be the most famous common-born in Arden. And she was my friend. I wasn't foolish enough to think it was due to any great virtue on my part. I'd always known the young woman offered me her mentorship because she knew the truth of what her family had done to me. Unlike other Robarts, she was ashamed of their family's dishonest dealing. But now that we had gotten to know each other, I sometimes thought she genuinely liked me and didn't only offer friendship out of obligation. "I'll see the letter safely where it belongs." Zachary stowed it in one of his endless internal pockets. I watched it disappear with reluctance, but I was exceedingly fortunate if I escaped this lightly. If Zachary was true to his word, I only had to dread what Faylie would say to me after his visit. Would she be disgusted enough to drop our connection as Gina had once done? The thought brought me pain, especially since it would be a result of my own foolish choices if she did. I shouldn't have let my dreams lead me into such risky action. "I need to get home," I said shakily, expecting Zachary to protest again. He didn't. Swallowing, I murmured a final thank you and hurried out into the street, cradling my injured arm against my chest. The discovery of the letter had changed his attitude toward me completely, but I had no right to feel disappointed after what he had discovered. Of course, if I'd been sealed 2 years ago, everything would have been different. I could have carried as many letters as I wished, openly and with pride. And Zachary wouldn't have looked at me as if. I broke off my thoughts with a shaky laugh, turning into my street with a shake of my head. The blood loss, minor as it was, must have been affecting me after all. Sealed or not made little difference. Zachary was a mage, and even a minor mage was on an Zachary was a mage, and even a minor mage was on an entirely different social level from a commonborn. He'd been grateful to me for saving his life, but his interest ended there, and my circumstances had nothing to do with it. A lancing pain hit me as I hurried through my front door, making me stumble. More pain followed in its wake until I was awash with it. Zachary's pain relief composition had run out of power, just as he had feared. Workings like that were usually designed to cover the short time that it took to diagnose the issue and work a proper healing composition, as Zachary had done for himself. Where am I in this chapter? Because I didn't know there's any other characters in this chapter. Oops. My bad. Okay. As Zachary had done for himself. Arya! My second oldest brother appeared in front of me, his cry sharp and concerned. I tried to tell him I was all right, but my knees buckled under the onslaught of pain. Harvey caught me before I fell, lifting me into his arms with unusual gentleness. Mother! His call preceded his quick stride, and I tried to protest. He was moving toward the dining room, and I couldn't appear at my birthday meal covered in dirt and blood. But Harvey ignored my mumbled words, bursting into the room in the most dramatic fashion possible. Cries and exclamations broke out, and a chair crashed to the ground. Really, this isn't necessary, I started to say, but my words dying as I caught a glimpse of Faithy's concerned face. Tears welled in my eyes at the knowledge that she would soon be looking at me differently. But the view of my guests was replaced with the face of my mother, shock rendering her silent for once. Her comforting presence released something inside me, and with all the fight gone, darkness swooped in to take its place. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 3 of Books and Mages by Melanie Cellier. So I'm going to be back on here. I'm taking a break for about an hour and a half-ish. I want to do some pickups for another book and get some lunch. But I will be back here recording another couple more chapters of Books and Mages by Melanie Cellier in a little bit. Thanks for joining me. Yes, and now.